Sometimes life doesn't just break you. It strips away everything you thought you were until you're left staring at the man in the mirror, wondering how you ended up so lost. That was Jack Marlo's reality. Once a respected high school woodshop teacher, now he was a widower trying to hold himself together while his sons struggled through college and their savings drained away. Bills piled up, his career crumbled, and the memory of his late wife Sarah haunted every empty corner of his home. So when a lawyer called with an offer that sounded more like a cruel prank than a blessing, a luxury mountain cabin in Montana for $1, Jack nearly hung up. But curiosity outweighed disbelief, and soon he found himself driving into Cedar Ridge, a tiny town tucked deep into the mountains, carrying a deed he hadn't earned and a key that shouldn't have belonged to him. The instructions were simple: live in the cabin alone for 30 days. That was it. But the moment Jack stepped through the door, the air changed. This was no ordinary home. Handcrafted furniture filled every room, photographs of townsfolk from decades past lined the walls, and every corner felt like it had been waiting specifically for him. The real mystery wasn't what he found there. It was why someone had chosen him, a broken-down teacher with nothing left to give, to inherit such a masterpiece. The drive into Cedar Ridge was like traveling backward in time. Each mile pulled Jack further away from the weight of his failures and deeper into a place that seemed untouched by modern chaos. 3 months earlier, he'd been Jack Marlo, the teacher. 22 years of tenure, guiding kids to shape wood into something that might outlast them. Now he was simply a casualty of budget cuts, another man stripped of identity by circumstances he couldn't control. His late wife Sarah had always been the planner, the one who kept life in order even during her final months battling cancer. She'd whispered to him, "You're stronger than you think, but you have to remember how to see it." 2 years later, those words still felt like a wound instead of encouragement. The GPS voice announced his arrival just as the sun lit up Cedar Ridge's main street. It was like stepping into a painting: an old general store, tidy houses, a church spire in the distance. Inside that general store, Jack met Martha Henley, the kind of woman who could see straight through you with one look. When she heard he now owned the Mitchell place, her polite smile faltered. The Mitchells, she explained, had vanished 30 years earlier. No note, no goodbye, just gone, leaving behind the cabin they loved more than anything. The thought settled on Jack like a stone. This wasn't a gift. It was a riddle. The cabin itself was more magnificent than anything Jack could have imagined. Rising from a meadow like it belonged to the earth itself, it was all golden logs and broad windows framing endless mountain peaks. A wraparound porch seemed made for evenings under the stars, and the inside, it stole his breath. Cathedral ceilings supported by hand-hewn beams, a massive stone fireplace, furniture that spoke of a craftsman's devotion. This wasn't just a house. It was a love story carved into wood. As Jack explored, he found details that made him feel like an intruder in someone's dream. A reading nook tucked under a window, a mudroom perfectly designed for hikers, a kitchen window framing a view so beautiful it felt intentional. And then there was the sign. Hanging near the door, hand-carved letters whispered, "Home is where love lives." The phrase hit Jack like a physical blow, echoing Sarah's last Christmas words when she reminded him that home isn't a place, it's the people you choose to love. That night, lying in a bed he hadn't earned, staring at ceiling beams made by another man's hands, Jack realized he hadn't just stepped into a cabin. He'd stepped into a legacy. And whatever had happened to Henry and Eleanor Mitchell, the couple who built this masterpiece, it was tied to him now. By morning, the mystery only deepened. Sunlight revealed not just beauty, but perfection, the kind of perfection someone had been maintaining for years despite the place being supposedly abandoned. In Eleanor's upstairs sitting room, Jack discovered a photo album waiting like it had been left out yesterday. Page after page told the Mitchells' story, building the cabin together, teaching, mentoring, serving their small community. They weren't just residents of Cedar Ridge. They were its heartbeat. Weddings, parades, graduations, Henry and Eleanor were in every photo, the kind of people who held a town together. But 30 years ago, the pictures stopped. One day they were everywhere, smiling, alive, essential. The next, gone, no explanation. That absence wasn't just a mystery. It was a wound that still bled in Cedar Ridge. Jack carried the album to Martha Henley, whose voice hardened as she admitted the town had never stopped asking what happened. They left their coffee warm on the stove, their beds made, the truck missing, but everything else perfectly intact. They'd never leave unless they had no choice, she said. And in that moment, Jack understood he hadn't inherited a cabin. He'd inherited a ghost story wrapped in wood and silence. The basement key revealed more than answers. It opened the door to Henry's workshop, a craftsman's paradise that seemed preserved in time. Tools hung in perfect rows, chisels sharpened, saw blades gleaming. A half-finished rocking chair sat waiting in the corner like Henry had just stepped away. Jack touched the tools with reverence, remembering his own father teaching him to work with wood, and something stirred inside him, something he hadn't felt since Sarah's death. His hands knew what to do, as if Henry had left the space for him. That's where Tom Brady, a local handyman who'd once been Henry's apprentice, found him. Tom confirmed the date, August 15th, 1993, the day the Mitchells vanished. He'd been scheduled to help Henry finish that rocking chair, but when he arrived, the cabin was empty. Eleanor, he admitted, had shown signs of memory trouble in the months before. Henry had been worried. Tom's eyes softened as he said what Jack already sensed. Henry and Eleanor had not left Cedar Ridge by choice. They loved it too much. Someone or something had forced them away. Twice now Jack had been warned not to stir old wounds, but both times the warning only sharpened his determination. The truth began to reveal itself in the most intimate of places, Eleanor's writing desk. Hidden inside a secret compartment was a bundle of letters tied with faded ribbon. They weren't just letters, they were the Mitchells' hearts laid bare. Henry wrote from Europe in 1944, dreaming of the cabin they'd one day build together. Eleanor's responses were filled with warmth, devotion, and the promise of a life shaped by love and community. But the later letters darkened. Eleanor's handwriting trembled, her words confessing fear of forgetting everything she cherished. Henry's notes spoke of doctors, tests, and the word no one wanted to hear, Alzheimer. Eleanor begged him to promise that if she lost herself completely, they would find a way to say goodbye before she forgot how much she loved him. That's when Jack knew the Mitchells hadn't abandoned their home. They had chosen their exit. They hadn't disappeared at all. They had left together deliberately, while Eleanor still remembered who Henry was. Their mystery wasn't tragedy. It was love refusing to be consumed by disease. Cedar Ridge had carried 30 years of unanswered grief, but Eleanor had planned for the truth to surface. With the help of Clara, the town librarian, Jack pieced it together. The Mitchells had traveled to Oregon, one of the only states at the time to allow physician-assisted death for terminal patients. They chose to leave this world with dignity, hand in hand, rather than let Alzheimer's erase their love story. They left behind journals, medical records, and letters explaining their decision, but also instructions. The cabin, the tools, even a trust fund for the town's future had been designed with precision, waiting for a moment when someone broken enough to understand love's hardest choices would inherit it. That someone was Jack, because he too had loved and lost. He too knew what it meant to watch illness steal a life piece by piece. As the town council gathered, Jack told them the truth. The silence turned to tears, then to gratitude. Henry and Eleanor hadn't abandoned Cedar Ridge. They had saved it, financially, emotionally, spiritually. And through Jack, their story could finally be told. Standing in the meadow behind the cabin where Henry and Eleanor's ashes had been scattered, Jack felt the truth settle into his bones. This wasn't just a house. It was a monument to love that endured even beyond death. His grandmother Rose, it turned out, had been Eleanor's childhood friend, a connection tying him to this place across generations. It was never random. He was always meant to be here. The cabin wasn't just a gift, it was a calling. Jack returned to the workshop, tools in hand, and began repairing what time had worn down, one board, one joint, one stroke at a time. He wasn't just fixing wood. He was rebuilding himself. And as the Tennessee waltz played softly from Eleanor's music box, he finally understood what Sarah, what Henry, what Eleanor had all been trying to teach him. Love doesn't end with loss. It continues if we have the courage to carry it forward. So if you've stayed with me through this story, take this with you. Whatever grief you carry, whatever losses you've endured, remember that second chances often come disguised as mysteries. If this story touched you, don't just click away. Subscribe, share it with someone who needs hope, and join me tomorrow, because I've saved another story that just might change the way you see your own life.